Okay, once again, I am starting the vlog on a Sunday, starting in a different location. I'm hopeful that I will do more smaller updates throughout the week. My voice still sounds a little bit weird thanks to the cold thing that's just keeps lasting. It goes through all these phases and then just doesn't want to let go. I have 3 books to talk about that I have read since Thursday. My brain is not in a place to do coherent thoughts because I was super tired today. I had a long day yesterday doing a lot of stuff. I had a birthday celebration out at my mom and stepdad's for a different family member. And then I went out for coffee with a good friend and former colleague of mine. And then we went to like a celebration of life for the son of a former colleague that we both had at my current school back when we both taught there years ago. It's been a few years since I've interacted with this former colleague because she remarried and moved to Tennessee, but her kids were still living in the area, and it just was something very tragic. He was only 25. They don't know exactly what happened, but that was just a lot, and that took up basically my entire afternoon yesterday, so I didn't do any reading of any of my ARCs or ebooks. So I just have the 3 audiobooks that I've read, and then just today I just was tired. And something that happens whenever I'm editing videos is I get super sleepy. And so that took me longer because I knew I was already tired. I tried to edit 2 videos, my 2 videos for the week, and I did the rough edit of one, barely made it through, took a little nap, dozed off just for a little bit, came back, rough edited the next one, did that for the rough edits of both, and then for the actual edit, just got those posted. Well, they're uploading. But anyway, it is much later in the day than I would have hoped to be doing this, but that's okay. So the 3 books I have to talk about, none of them are fantasy. 2 of them are nonfiction, and one is young adult mystery thriller, basically. The nonfictions that I read, I don't have physical copies of. One of them I do intend to purchase. The other one, it was just fine, so I don't intend to purchase a copy of that one. But I had checked them out from the library because I was trying to get recommendations for my mom. She tends to read more nonfiction, and these were on my TBR. I don't remember when I put them on my TBR because neither of them are new releases. Both of them are backlist. The first of those that I read is Seven Fallen Feathers, and I do not remember the author's name, but I will have an image up. And this one, I really enjoyed the experience. It taught me a lot, and I appreciated how the author told the story. The 7 Fallen Feathers represent 7 Indigenous children, First Nation teenagers in Canada. That's where this book is set, who died under suspicious circumstances throughout the early 2000s to 2015, 16, somewhere in there. And there was just so much that was going wrong with this, and people were campaigning and advocating and trying to get change. Towards the end of that, there finally was an inquest that looked at all 7 of these cases. And it's unique in how they were grouped together for that inquest because none of these deaths were connected in the sense that, oh no, it's a serial killer and we want to figure out what's going wrong, or they were all very specifically tied to one another. They just had things in common, underlying systemic issues that led to the death of these kids. And the way that the author told the story was very unique to a nonfiction book. She talked about each of the cases, each of the kids, in chronological order of when their deaths occurred. So she started by telling the story of the first kid who died, about his upbringing, his background, his family, etc. And then once that case finished, she talked about some of the underlying issues that led specifically to that kid's death. And she did that for each of them before, at the end, tying those all together just like that inquest did. And she spent some time talking about that as well. I really appreciated the way that she told this history. And I think that this book needs to be more widely read. I'm not going to go into too much detail because my brain still is a little muddled at the moment. Sleepy, not making the connections, etc. The other nonfiction that I read was called The Survivors of the Clotilda. I think that these stories also need to be told. Unfortunately, I just found this particular telling of them to be quite boring. I learned much more about the Clotilda, which was an illegal importation of slaves in 1858, from one of the books on the young adult SESL list this year called Africantown, written in verse by 2 authors, and they did a phenomenal job with that. That was one of the standouts on that list of many, thankfully. This telling, though, just felt so dry and so disconnected from the more personal aspects that needed to be told. It read very clinical. And having read that other narrative fiction exploration of the same story, which brought in so much more of the stories of trying to reach out empathetically and engage in a way that made the readers try to empathize with these people, it just was fine. I learned some new information, but at several points I just went, this is really boring, but I'm going to finish it. Because there wasn't anything bad about it. I wasn't going to DNF it. It wasn't overly long. I just can't recommend it just because of the mechanics of the writing making it too boring. The third book that I read, taking a hard pivot, is my first Alex Jackson book, The Reappearance of Rachel Price. A lot of people that I know that have read this book and Five Survive, which are her 2 books that she published after her A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, which put her on the map, have compared those 2 books, especially Five Survive, but this one as well, to that series and wondered, is she a one-hit wonder? Was it just that series that worked for her? I have not gotten to that series yet. I have the first in the trilogy. And I wonder if that benefited me because I don't have that to compare to. I really enjoyed this. Are there things where you have to engage in the suspension of disbelief? Yes, it's that type of book. But I found myself really intrigued by what was going on. I still don't understand why the dad and the rest of the family voluntarily agreed to bring in this documentary film crew. If you know about the different secrets. It just was like the possibility of things to be uncovered and publicized. It's like, why would you invite that in if things have been going well for you thus far? The conceit of this book is that the main character, Belle, when she was 2 years old, she was in the car with her mom when her mom disappeared, leaving her behind in the car that was running, the heater was on, etc. She was fine. She was found, and she was fine until she was found. But her mom has not been seen since. It's been 16 years. The family brings in a documentary film crew to film a documentary. The family says it's to get the money to help pay for a live-in caregiver for the grandfather, her father and uncle's dad, who has vascular dementia. He had a stroke the year before, maybe a series of strokes, is going downhill very quickly. He really doesn't remember anything, needs to have someone there full time. Obviously, that costs a lot. And so that's their stated justification for why they are filming this. Then, as should be obvious by the word reappearance, Rachel Price comes back, and then everything is thrown into disarray. And things are uncovered, things are revealed, there are twists, there are turns. There was one twist in here, one reveal that I did actually figure out way before it was revealed in the book. I'm like, that's got to be the case. I didn't mind that reveal came later. It was kind of fun because I'm like, oh, I'm picking up on these clues. And I think that this means this, X means Y, whatever you want to say there. Maybe it's because I'm new to this genre. Although I would say that I have a healthy level of skepticism, I still really enjoyed this. I don't know if it did anything groundbreaking. It didn't read like it did anything groundbreaking, but I enjoyed Belle as a main character. The explorations of her relationships with her dad, who has been her rock, basically, has been her person who has never left throughout these years. And that's what she has a hang up on, is like people always leaving. And then her relationship with her mom, when her mom comes back into the picture, because Belle has basically written off the fact that her mom was alive. It's not that she thought that her mom was a bad person. It's just in her mind, how she's dealt with her mom not being there is like, oh, mom's dead. And then you have to completely change your brain chemistry, wiring, etc., when mom comes back in the picture. And it is definitively Rachel Price when she comes back. There's not really a lot of doubt that it could be her. I found this fascinating. I really enjoyed it. And if A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is even better, I really look forward to that. From what I've heard about the premise of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, this premise of why Belle is doing investigating and what she does seems more believable than the supposed premise or stated premise in A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. But people really, really, really like that. So reading this makes me really excited to get to that book. So I enjoyed this. I don't know what I'll rate it. I just finished it earlier today, so I haven't put it through Cowpile or anything. Probably going to get a 4 stars because I haven't figured out my taste in mystery thrillers. Maybe it'll get a 4.5. I don't think, though, that it was quite that good, but I definitely enjoyed my time. Funnily enough, though, the next book that I'm reading is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, but I have just barely started. So I don't really have many thoughts on that, except for this also is mixed media, which is what A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson is known for. So far there have been some podcast elements in here, and I did not know that this was mixed media, but how it's being done, I am appreciating. Okay, as has become the tradition for August, I'm here at the end of the next set of 7 days to wrap up my reading for the week. I have 3 more books to talk about that I've completed. I am a little over halfway completed with another one that I'll mention at the end. And this week, I read just 7 books. I had a student today, so every day in their class, they start off with 10 minutes of reading. I go around and I'll do little mini check-ins with 3 or 4 of them. Hopefully, get to all of them within a week or 2 and then start that process over again. And I was doing a initial check-in with one of my newer students. A couple of the other girls at the same table as him were asking some questions about, because I have book covers as decoration, they were asking some questions, and somehow it came up that, as I've mentioned, I've read every book that's in the classroom library. The kid I was doing the check-in with, he looks at me and goes, "Why?" It's like, I like reading. So I know that the amount that I read is not typical. I loved that response. Leave it to middle schoolers, to be completely honest with you. So I have 3 books to talk about. 1 young adult, 1 adult, and 1 middle grade. 2 of them are mystery thriller, and the other is basically contemporary realistic fiction. So I believe in the first half I had talked about this book. I don't know if I talked about it after I finished it, because I definitely finished it in the second half of the week. I really enjoyed this. There were some things that I just thought at the end, how are you going to get them out of this? Because if we'd had it be more realistic, more like follow through, always do the right thing, it would have ended up with not necessarily innocent people, but people who had been victimized, getting in trouble. And it's like, how do you deal with that? It's a dilemma that Holly Jackson doesn't delve into in this book. This is not the type of book for that. But it leaves you thinking about, because I'm like, do the right thing, tell what has happened in these various scenarios, but at the same time, doing that would, according to our justice system and how we run things, it would end up with the victims being punished for the acts that they committed in response to the people who victimized them. So how do you handle that? I thought it posed a lot. I really enjoyed it. And I'm going to keep this part short because I think I talked about it longer in the first half. Although I don't know why. Maybe I was almost done. Maybe that's why I was talking about it. So the next one I picked up is Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True. This is fairly highly rated, especially for a mystery thriller, at least what I've seen on Goodreads. I am very new to this genre, and I'm not usually a fan of some of the tropes that are typical in this genre, like the unreliable narrator. I really don't like unreliable narrator. It just doesn't work for my brain. I'm not saying that that is the case for this. That's just a very common mystery thriller trope. And this book opens up, this setting is basically, you have 2 main characters. You have Alex and you have Josie. And both of them, they end up meeting at a restaurant on their birthday. It turns out that both of them were born on the exact same day, same year, same hospital. And it gets into a bit of mixed media in here because Alex is a renowned podcast host. And then there are things that, there's a few snippets periodically sprinkled throughout of like modern day. Because the majority of this takes place in 2019. Where apparently there's been some Netflix show that's like, hi, I'm your birthday twin. Which is what Josie says to Alex when they first meet. The way that this story unfolds, because each of them, more so Josie than Alex, but each of them has lots of secrets. Alex is dealing with an alcoholic husband who has addiction issues. Josie is dealing with, I mean, you name it, the sorts of trauma that are talked about. But there is a little bit of unreliability in the narration as it's going along. But at the same time, there are facts that are incontrovertibly true and makes you think, it lends credibility to one side of the story, one version of the story. And even if another version is true, that doesn't make these incontrovertible facts less awful. It was really interesting how it unfolded, the tragedy that unfolded with this as other things were revealed, the way that Lisa Jewell spun the web further and further out. There was so much introspection into aspects of like daily lives of the struggles of especially Alex, because her life is fairly quote unquote normal, especially in comparison to Josie's, but there's still stuff that she's dealing with and she's learning, growing through. She's battling with the issues with her husband because she really loves him. It's like, how do you love someone who has an addiction? And then it brings in all of the other baggage from Josie and her family. And it's just really fascinating. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Am I an expert on mystery thrillers? No. I definitely, though, want to read more of them, especially if they're as well written as this one. Now, could I have done without that very last twist at the end? Probably, but it did lend intrigue at the very end. In the epilogue, there was a twist at the end, but it wasn't over the main aspects of the mystery going on throughout this. It was through one side piece of it. But at the same time, I didn't think, oh man, why did you go and do that? Throw that plot device in there. I was just like, oh, we're adding this on, and it makes you think, is this actually true, what's being said in this epilogue? Because if it's true, oh, that's significant. But at the same time, all of the things that have been built for this one particular character, who is the narrator of the epilogue. Wow, it's tricky to talk about mystery thrillers without spoilers. But everything that has been built for that character and how they narrate things makes you think, do I believe this character? Do I not believe this character? Even if I don't believe this character, maybe what that character believes informs their actions. Fascinating. The last one that I finished is actually the one from my Classroom Library Challenge, that video that went up a couple weeks. I really enjoyed this. This is an older work, 2010? No, 2000. I've read several Sharon Creech books. I'd never heard of this one before, and I really enjoy the way that she builds these stories. So the main character is part of a family. She's the youngest of three. They live a very itinerant lifestyle. Her father's always going from job to job. They move a lot. Part of her family is from like rural Appalachia sort of area. She was born in Kentucky somewhere, but has lived so many different places. At the start of the story, the narration is like, I'm being kidnapped. She's not actually being kidnapped. What has happened is her older sister run off and gotten married to a Marine who's shipped out, comes home, she's pregnant, sister is about to have the baby. They take advantage, her parents take advantage of the opportunity that she has because her mom's brother-in-law, her mom's sister's husband, has now become the headmaster of an American school in Switzerland. And so they take the advantage of this opportunity to have her go live with her aunt and uncle in Switzerland and attend this school. So she's going away from the family that she's always known. It's not like she doesn't have experience moving from place to place fairly frequently. It's just that she's never been separated from the family that she's known. And when she gets to the school, obviously there are boarders. She stays with her aunt and uncle. There are dorms, and she meets different people, becomes friends with different people. Really intriguing in this coming of age sort of exploration throughout this very short book. So at the end of the month, this book will definitely be making its way onto my classroom library shelf. So that was the success. First success for this round of books. And I just realized in my TBR for September, I haven't pulled anything off of there because I'm using the Aurelium prompts for Magical Readathon for my books for next month. I will have to take a look at those books throughout the month, maybe, and get to some of those. So when it comes to the books that I have read this week, the ones that I have physically are right here. It looks like I'm really slowing down. Now, that being said, 3 of the books that I read this week, I do not have physical copies of. That's Spin of Fate, Seven Fallen Feathers, and The Survivors of the Clotilda. So 2 nonfiction, 2 mystery thrillers, 2 fantasy, and 1 contemporary. So I had a very varied genre this week, and especially compared to last week, my ratings for this week are so much higher. I still have not come across a 5-star. This might be a month without a 5-star. I don't know. I'm really enjoying the book that I'm reading. I remember that I mentioned that I was going to say which book I'm reading. I am reading A Fate Inked in Blood by Daniel L. Jensen. I do not know whether that's going to be on the fantasy list or the romantasy list if Goodreads still has it. But as I'm reading it, I really don't know if it would be considered romantasy, at least through the first 50%. Yes, there's a distinct romantic subplot to this, but the world building is so well done in this book. I really enjoy the world that Daniel L. Jensen has created. I definitely vibe with Nordic worlds really strongly. That being said, there have been some elements of this plot that are different, but have strong echoes of the Path of the Dead from Lord of the Rings. Every time they talk about that section, I just see Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn going through the paths of the dead, and it's different. Was Daniel L. Jensen thinking of that when she's describing this aspect? And of course, a lot of this stuff from the whole Norse aspect of it reminds me of Rohan, because those were the vibes that J.R.R. Tolkien pulled on, and Rohan is my favorite part of Middle-earth. So maybe that's why I have such an affinity towards Norse-based fiction, but I am enjoying it. I have skipped through some scenes. It's not a thing for me to read the scenes that get into the, closed door sections. I mean, it's on page and no full out scene has happened, which, thank you. I don't personally enjoy that. I'm not harshing on anyone else's vibe if they do enjoy reading that sort of thing. It just does not make me feel comfortable. So I'll skip through those things. If a book is going to be mostly those, that's definitely not the book for me. So far, I think I've reached about 60%, and I've maybe skipped like a minute or 2 of the audiobook. We're totally fine. The way, though, that Jensen is building the romantic tension, I fully believe. And I think it's valid how it's being built. I think I'll save the synopsis for when I talk about it in next week's vlog, because I hope to finish it tomorrow. I started it yesterday, read a lot of it today. I hope to finish it tomorrow. It is one of the longer books. I think I might get in 1, maybe 2 more books. I haven't been reading a lot physically, if you can't tell. Every single book that I read this past week was audiobook. I've kind of fallen out of the habit of regular physical ebook or like books that you can hold in your hand. I did have a lot more going on the weekend, which is when I read the physical books and not the audiobooks. So hopefully there will be more this coming weekend. That being said, thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.